Your check engine light's on, and the scanner flashes P0420. The internet says bad catalytic converter, and you're already picturing $1,500 flying out of your pocket. Slow down, that's the trap that drains most DIY budgets. A converter rarely fails on its own. Something upstream usually took it out. Before you swap that cat, run 3 quick checks that actually tell the story. Watch your oxygen sensor live data, inspect for small exhaust leaks, and compare inlet and outlet temperatures. Stick with me, and you'll see how these checks can save serious money and expose the real problem first. Why most people waste $1,500 on this code. Ever wondered why so many drivers lose $1,500 to this single code? It's because P0420 gets treated like a verdict instead of a clue. The light pops on, and before any test or inspection, most people assume the catalytic converter's toast. A forum post, a quick online search, and suddenly a $1,000 part order is in motion. But more often than not, the converter was never the starting problem. It was the last victim. The truth is, your engine's computer doesn't actually inspect what's inside the converter. It judges efficiency by comparing 2 oxygen sensors, one mounted before the converter and one after it. The upstream sensor lives in the raw exhaust stream, and its voltage jumps up and down constantly as the ECU balances air and fuel. The downstream sensor measures the gas after it's been cleaned. If the converter is healthy and storing oxygen like it should, that second sensor will show a steady signal. When the converter can't store oxygen anymore, its readings start copying the rapid swings of the first sensor. That's when the ECU flags P0420, efficiency below threshold. Now here's where things go sideways. Those matching signals between sensors don't always mean the converter's done. Small exhaust leaks before or near the sensors can suck in fresh outside air. That extra oxygen tricks the sensors into reading lean, making the ECU think the converter isn't doing its job. The strange part is, this fake failure can come from something as minor as a cracked manifold gasket or a loose clamp. Repairing it might cost a few bucks, yet skipping that step often leads to an unnecessary $1,000 converter swap. Here's the real kicker. A quality catalytic converter plus shop labor and hardware can easily reach $1,500. Meanwhile, the usual suspects that set off the same code, a lazy upstream oxygen sensor, a gasket leak, or minor fuel trim imbalance, cost less than an oil change to verify and fix. When the ECU gets false data from those issues, it's not saying the converter is bad, it's saying the math doesn't add up. Replacing the cat without catching the math error almost guarantees the light comes right back on. Think about what actually causes a converter to fail. Misfires send unburned fuel straight into the exhaust, superheating the cat's core until it melts. Bad injectors or high fuel pressure can do the same by overfueling, while an old or slow oxygen sensor lets the mixture run too rich or too lean. Add a small leak upstream, and the sensors lose any real picture of what's going on. Each of these problems is cheaper to test and fix before touching the converter, but too often they get ignored. Skipping diagnosis doesn't only hurt your wallet, it can keep you from passing emissions. Even a brand new converter won't store oxygen properly if it's constantly being flooded by a rich mixture or fed false readings from worn sensors. That means the check engine light returns, fuel economy drops, and inspection day turns into another repair bill. Straight up, the catalytic converter usually fails because something upstream abused it. Until you track that down, every new converter you install is running on borrowed time. Next up, you'll see how to look at oxygen sensor signals in real time and tell within minutes whether the converter's actually working before spending a dime. Reading O2 signals, the 5-minute test that saves you. Now let's get hands-on with the first test reading your oxygen sensor signals. This quick check tells you more in 5 minutes than replacing parts all weekend. You're gonna use the car's own data to see if the converter is cleaning exhaust or just sending it through. Grab your OBD2 scanner and switch to live data mode. Choose Bank 1 Sensor 1 and Bank 1 Sensor 2. Start the engine, let it reach full operating temperature, and watch how those voltage numbers behave. A healthy upstream sensor, that's sensor 1, before the converter should cycle rapidly between about 0.1 volts lean and 0.9 volts rich. It should move up and down several times each second as the computer balances the air-fuel mix. That fast switching means both the sensor and fueling system are responding properly. Next, look at the downstream sensor, sensor 2 after the converter. On a healthy system, it should stay mostly steady and higher than 0.45 volts. Maybe moving gently, but without sharp highs and lows. That steady line shows the converter is storing oxygen and smoothing out what the front sensor saw. When both sensors start switching in unison, bouncing the same way at nearly the same pace, that's a clear sign the converter isn't storing oxygen anymore. The gas entering and leaving the converter looks nearly identical, and that's effectively a fail. People often stop after seeing the code and assume the converter's wasted, but live data separates a weak cat from a bad reading. What you want to know is how those waveforms behave over time. If you see a strong, choppy pattern up front and a smooth, steady trace in the rear, the converter is active and doing its job. If both waveforms trace similar peaks and valleys, the rear sensor is just echoing what the front sees, meaning the cat has stopped cleaning the exhaust effectively, or a reading upstream is lying to the ECU. To tighten up the test, bring the engine speed up to around 2,000 RPM and hold it steady. The upstream sensor should keep switching rapidly, and the downstream should flatten even more. That separation between the two waveforms is what you're looking for. Smaller gaps or matching motion means the converter is either contaminated or not heating enough to operate correctly. Before drawing a conclusion, confirm your signal isn't being fooled. If the readings jump wildly or drop out, check the sensor wiring and connectors for corrosion or cuts. A false signal from a weak sensor can copy the same pattern as a failing converter. If your scanner allows it, open Mode 6 data next. That's where the car's computer stores results of its internal self-tests, including the catalyst efficiency monitor labeled MID21 on most scanners. This data tells you how the ECU judged converter performance during its last drive cycle, not just what you see in live data. Matching both gives you strong evidence before making any expensive decisions. You can double-check your live data with a quick temperature reading. After a short drive, use an infrared thermometer to measure the pipe just before and just after the converter. A properly working converter will always be hotter at the outlet, ideally at least 100 degrees Fahrenheit higher, because that chemical reaction inside produces heat as it burns off the leftover fuel and gases. If the temperatures are roughly equal, or the outlet is cooler, the converter either hasn't lit off or is clogged internally. This 5-minute test isn't a guess, it's your proof. You can see with your own eyes whether the system's doing its job or just faking it. Next up, we'll connect those numbers and heat readings to the bigger picture, how the system communicates what's really failing and what to check before replacing a single part. Doing a P0420 diagnosis the right way isn't guesswork. It's understanding what the system's telling you and acting on it. The code only says efficiency's down. Your job is to find out why before spending a dime. Run the 3 checks. Read the upstream and downstream O2 signals, check for exhaust leaks ahead of the converter, and confirm the temperature drop front to back. If something upstream, a misfire, a rich mix, or a leak is left alone, it'll destroy a new converter just like the old one. Fix the cause first, and the code stays gone. Subscribe for practical how-tos and tool-first tutorials you can use this weekend.